fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Join your host, Phil Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers. We are talking awards. We're going to do a midweek show. It's the bye week. We're officially in. We've played 10 games. It's a pretty good sample size now. We're just over the halfway point in the season, so it's time to hand out some hardware. And it'll be a fun show. It'll just be a fun show.
It will be a fun show. I'm honestly like going through this. There wasn't a lot of like really difficult decisions. But there were a couple where it's like, this could really go in multiple directions.
And I found out that be the case as well.
So and it was a very positive thing. Like, this team is better than, it's better than anyone ever thought they would be. And it's been kind of a fun season. So let's go through and hand out some hardware.
Yeah, no, for sure. We decided before we did this show that this would kind of be the positive show, and we were going to do another one in a few days that leaned more towards what can we work on, what needs improvement, which players need to kind of step up in order for us to get into the playoffs and maybe win a game or two. And so we'll reserve our kind of work on segment for that show. And this is mostly 100% positive, I think, as far as shows will go. Of course, we're kind of lean that way anyway. But so the way that we'll do this is we've just got some categories. We'll kind of go through them as we do. Keith's brought his list in. I've brought mine in. We'll see where we compare and contrast, and we'll just get started. So the first category is best non-starting player on offense. As you can see right away, we just made these things up, but it's kind of a fun talking point. So best non-starting player on offense. Did you bring in a little list, or do you just have one single player?
I just have one single player. This was one of the harder ones, simply because I'm like, okay, anyone that wasn't starting early and has played really well is starting now. And so, this was a more difficult category for me on offense. But I went, and now I can't even read my own handwriting.
That's funny. I'll start, because I'll start. I went with a list approach because I wanted to show contenders. Well, I wanted to show contenders, and then I wanted to show, who I chose. So for me, and I may have cheated, and you can tell me if I did, because that's what you do. Yes. I put Travis Homer on there. I put Marquise Goodwin on there. I put Colby Parkinson on there, and Phil Haynes.
Phil Haynes. That's what my writing was that I was looking for.
Okay. So you went with Phil Haynes. Tell me why.
Because he has come in, played both guard spots, has been he's been just as good as the two people above him, to the point where even when everybody's healthy, he's still getting snaps, and he just can't. They can't keep him off the field. He's been good enough to get that, and it just makes sense for me in a group where, a lot of these guys, like Homer was only played the last 3 games. He was hurt before that, and that kind of stuff. So I didn't feel like there was this huge list of contenders, except for Phil Haynes, who's played significant snaps in almost every game this year.
Yeah. Well, I kind of knew that you would be leaning offensive lineman in this category. Now, and Phil Haynes makes sense. I mean, he splits time with Gabe Jackson. Gabe gets slightly more than half the snaps, at least the last 3 or 4 weeks. Overall, Haynes has a 67.1 Pro Football Focus grade with a 70.9 pass block grade, and Gabe Jackson is lower across the board than those grades, and I think does a better job for the Seahawks. And quite frankly, I think Seattle chooses to move on from Gabe Jackson or really lowers his salary next year, and Haynes, they re-sign him, and he comes back and kind of takes over that right spot unless they upgrade in the draft, which is entirely possible. I thought Kobe Parkinson was a good choice in this category as well, in that he's the third tight end, which makes him the non-starter. He's got 13 receptions, 172 yards, and a touchdown, clearly an upgrade from his previous seasons. So I thought he should be on the list. And then my choice was Marquise Goodwin. Now you can say, well, he's a third receiver. He's a quote unquote starter, but really that's, he's the third wide receiver. So he's not technically the starter. 16 receptions, 217 yards, 3 touchdowns. A couple of those have been spectacular catches. Probably the best third wide receiver option Seattle's had since Tyler Lockett was the third wide receiver clear back in 2017 when Doug Baldwin and Paul Richardson were around. That year, Lockett had 45 receptions, 555 yards, and a couple touchdowns. And so Marquise Goodwin, with 7 games to go, really has a chance here to kind of have an impact on the team. I would think, based on those stats too, that his usage could possibly go up too. So that's my non-starting player on offense so far.
Yeah, he made sense. I had because teams play the nickel so much, or not a nickel, they play 3 wide receivers so much because most teams don't have, the trio of tight ends that Seattle does, that I don't consider the third wide receiver a non-starter. And also,
he does average about 60% of the snaps per game. So whereas Tyler Lockett and Metcalf are playing about 98% of the snaps or 95%, that's my criteria.
Yeah, it would be more, except for that both of them have missed time because of injury. But yeah, Goodwin is a good name to have in there. When DK Metcalf went out, we thought he was going to be out with a knee injury. It was Marquise Goodwin who stepped up and filled that role and provided, some balance so that the teams couldn't just, double and triple team Tyler Lockett the whole time.
All right. So we switched to the defense. Best starting player, non-starter on defense.
I went with Kobe Bryant. And then I thought, wait,
nice.
He's the nickel. Does that count? Because for the same reason why I didn't want to. The same reason I didn't want to include Goodwin. I'm like, maybe I can't pick him. And so then I changed my mind and said Boye Mafe.
Nice. 2 rookies.
Yeah,
that's great.
Is phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, Mafe has a 64.2 Pro Football Focus grade against the run, 18 solo tackles, really come on, pressuring the quarterback, making impact as a rookie. Kobe Bryant as well, 4 forced fumbles or 5 or whatever it is, a couple of interceptions that didn't count that got called back because of penalties on other players. So he's definitely on there. I actually put Bruce Irvin. Bruce has a 75.5% pass or run defense grade, and has just really kind of stepped in and made an impact right away. Now he might technically get starter minutes there. But he's a rotation guy. So I just kind of put him in there.
Yeah. And then as I thought about him, he also joined the team kind of late in this process and was one of the keys to this team turning things around and on defense because of his ability to set the edge and do good things in the run game. It just sort of freed stuff up and allowed other guys to concentrate on their own job. And so, yeah, he's been a great addition.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Fun list. All right, let's move on. Next category is best off-season addition.
So the thing about this is this free agency or is this the draft? Is it both?
I excluded the draft in my list.
Okay, because I at some point I had to make a decision, and I said I wasn't going to include the draft picks because we have rookie categories.
Yes.
And so for this one, it was Nuosu, outside linebacker, pass rusher, the best pass rusher on this team.
Yeah. Yep. I'm the same boat. I've got 13 combined tackles, 2 forced fumbles, 7 sacks, 35 pressures, 8 quarterback hits. Uchenna Nwasu really made a huge impact. Also in my kind of short list is Marquise Goodwin, Noah Fant, and Shelby Harris. So next category, special teams standout player.
So there's,
for me, this was a no-brainer.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I thought we could go a couple different directions on this.
Yeah.
But I obviously went with Jason Myers.
Yeah.
Who
me too.
he's missed 1 kick this year.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah. He's basically the 3rd or 4th best kicker in the NFL. Any way you measure it this year so far.
He's been absolutely automatic and hit some really long ones to help the team out. Like, I felt that was almost too easy to pick the kicker. Yeah. Because when you said special teams stand out, I was thinking like, oh, special teams. And then honestly, I mean, Nick Ballore is the captain and does a lot of good things there, but Joey Blount
was on my list.
Has been a guy that is down there making plays, especially on punt coverage. He's the first guy down the field a lot of times, has played, really, really good on coverage teams.
Had a fumble recovery.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So did DJ Dallas had one too. He's he didn't get to play special teams for a while because he was the backup running back, but now he's back in that role and you can tell he's back to doing good things.
Now, if you take a couple of mistakes away from Michael Dixon, the block punt and the election to run the ball inexplicably on that one play when it was like 4th and 9 in Seattle's territory, he's done really well as well. He's the top in the top 5 conversation for punters across the league. So I thought I'd just mention him.
Mm-hmm. Both in net and gross average. He's in like the top 3 for both of them. And so definitely someone that you'd consider, but
whoever impacts, I mean, Michael Dixon does impact the game. I mean, it's just one of those things where punters, you just don't want to think about him too much because you don't want your team to punt a heck of a lot. But when he does and he flips the field, that's a really important thing. And Seattle really depends on that as well. Okay. This is a fun category for me because I had a lot of different players that I thought could kind of be in this list. Is most improved player on the team so far through 10 games. And I'll tell you just who was under my list, and maybe we have the same kind of ideas. I had Will Disley, I had Colby Parkinson, I had Phil Haynes, Uchenna Nwasu, Ryan Neal, and Michael Jackson were all players that I thought could be considered for this. Which way did you go?
There's one player you missed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, Geno Smith. As the most improved player. He was gone from journeyman backup to top 5 in the NFL. Do you get a bigger swing than that?
That's true. I kind of wanted, I made this conscious decision to
not give everything
move away from the obvious. I did.
Yeah. And so he's the obvious one. So the person that I had written down was Michael Jackson.
Wow.
Because he was a roster afterthought, a practice squad guy who played well in camp, kind of pushed things, ended up starting because of a bunch of injuries to the guys above him, and has never let go of that spot to the point where they cut Sidney Jones in order to keep Michael Jackson in there. He's just been he's been such a nice and unexpected addition.
Yeah, going from really not appearing in 3 games last year to starting and then playing to where you don't even know if like Trey Brown can unseat him in that starting spot. And we just cut a player, in Jones that had extensive experience and played really well last year, was our best corner. and Artie Burns can't see the field. Mike Jackson's been playing that well. That's a good choice. The reason I put Will Disley on there is just he's on target so far. He's got 28 targets, 26 receptions, a couple 3 touchdowns, some nice yardage. If he doubles those totals by the end of the year, that would be a great season for him. Kobe Parkinson comes out of nowhere, touches the ball a few times last year. This time 15 target, 13 receptions, a touchdown, 7.8 yards after the catch. Kobe Parkinson's really been playing well. Ryan Neal. I mean, has anybody on the team been improved more than Ryan Neal? Now, Ryan Neal started as a good player, but he's got 33 combined tackles, 2 forced fumbles, a sack, an interception. He's just been playing really well.
He has been playing really well, but I'd push back on that because he played really well last year when he got called into play, and he played really well the year before when he got called into play. He should have been,
but you can still play really well and then just completely exceed those expectations. And I can think that's where he's at. And the other player that's on my list that actually I got this award to was Uchenna Nwasu. Didn't play for the Seahawks, but he played for the Chargers last year. He's literally matched or exceeded his 2021 season totals across the board that earned him at $12 million a year salary. He's already exceeded those, and he's still got 7 games to play. Sacks, pressures, tackles, total snaps. The whole thing is amazing. He played really well last year, but this year, given the opportunity, he's exceeding every possible expectation. And that's the guy I went with.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that didn't see the field early last year, kind of worked his way into the job and performed when he got on the field for the Chargers. And the Seahawks looked at him as a young guy with a ton of athleticism and production when given the opportunity. And they went out and signed him. And it's been he was my biggest acquisition of the team. Like, he's been great. So
33 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, 7 sacks, 35 pressures. I mean, the guy's just been all over the place. Okay. Let's go with biggest surprises so far this year. And this is a wide open category. Could be player, could be coaches, scheme, whatever you want to put under that umbrella. Biggest surprises of the year so far.
Okay, when you say it that way, like, you're right. We can go this a lot of different ways. I've got a few. I mean, we already mentioned Mike Jackson as a big surprise. And I think, we can do that. I put Disley in this category because he has already hit his career highs in a lot of things. And we're halfway through the year. I mean, he's really just kind of broken out this year and become a great player. But for me, the biggest surprise was the how bad the defense was for the first 4.5 games, and how good it's been since then. Because this coaching staff is too dang smart to make too many, bad choices. And they made a bunch of bad choices in designing this defense, and they had to go back and refigure it out. So I was surprised at how bad it was. And then it was bad for long enough that I was really shocked when it turned around and became a good defense again.
Yep. It's on my list. I literally put defensive turnaround because they're 8th. The team is 8th overall, but the defense is 17th. It was 31st at one point. It dropped as low as 12th after this last game. It's up to 17th again. But that's on there. I also put the win total for so far is a surprise. 6-4. It surpasses the line in Vegas over under at 5.5 games. It surpasses both our predictions from our prediction show. I put the 2 offensive line tackles playing well so far, playing really well.
Playing really well.
A little bit of a surprise. Uchenna Nwasu, I think, is a surprise. He's basically the best player on defense. And I don't know that anybody really kind of predicted that. They thought he would be a solid player and so forth, but that's really standing out for me. And
No,
then
he's been a Pro Bowler.
my winner in this category is Tariq Woolen, starting at a Pro Bowl level, 5th round pick, 153rd overall, Pro Football Focus grade, a 70.1 overall, 32 tackles, 30 of them solo, 5 interceptions, 10 pass breakups, 1 block field goal. The guy's just done it all. He's literally top 2 or 3 player on defense already. And
he wasn't supposed to play
10
this
games
year.
in. Yeah.
He's coming out of University of Texas, San Antonio, UTSA. And it was supposed to be this massive project, going to give him a full year. He was going to make plays on special teams, but that was it. No, he was having none of that. He earned a starting job in camp and has done nothing to make anybody doubt him since inserting himself into the starting lineup. He has been fantastic.
There's not been a single whisper of him losing snap counts or anything like that. He plays 100% of the snaps every game.
He's been excellent. Why would you? Why would there be a whisper of that?
Right. I agree. It's crazy. All right, fun.
We also, neither of us guessed or said the obvious surprise.
True, which is Geno Smith.
The same thing we were going to say for most of these categories,
which goes to show you just how really important Geno's been to this team.
He has been.
To his own career and to the expectations. All that stuff is out the window. This last game aside, he put up the stats, but he struggled in a couple of different things and had a turnover that was costly in this last game. But nonetheless, he's been the most important player, I think, on the team as far as wins and losses are concerned. And you can't discount that. There's just no way. I mean, that is a huge surprise. He wouldn't tell you it was a surprise, but it is a surprise to everyone else. Okay. Fun award here. It seems obvious to me, but let's see if it's just as obvious to you. Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Oh, this isn't obvious because you've got 3 good choices and I know which one you're going with. So I'm going to pick one of the other ones. I'm going to say Abe Lucas.
Yeah.
The right tackle. He has been really good. He's been dominant at times. When teams are getting pressure on Geno, it's almost never from the outside on around Abe Lucas's side. It's usually up the middle, and he has just been great. And he was a guy that, he's a 3rd round pick. There was a reason why he was down that low in the draft, but he's been better than I think any other rookie offensive tackle.
Yeah.
Including his teammate, Charles Cross, taken 9th overall, and the 2 guys taken before Charles Cross in the draft. So yeah, he is my my offensive player or offensive rookie.
Yeah, no, that's a great choice. He's on my list. I've got 3 players on the list. There's 3 rookies, Abe Lucas, Charles Cross, Ken Walker III. The thing about this category is all 3 you could make an argument for in any season that these guys would be available. And it just goes to show you how well the Seahawks drafted. The same thing on the defensive side. We'll get to that in a second. I put Ken Walker III on there probably for the obvious reasons. Anytime you have a player that's going to touch the ball and impact the game, you're going to have that guy be considered. And it's overwhelming to the point where you almost just have to kind of hand it to him. 121 carries, 588 yards, 7 touchdowns, 4.9 yards per carry, 31 forced missed tackles, 3.13 yards after the catch, 17 explosive runs or 10 or more yards. The guy's he's a rookie. And didn't really play very much in the first 3 games. Penny got hurt. Guy comes in, starts from their forward, and so most of these stats are just the last 7 games, which is remarkable. And so I think it paints to a really good future for that kid and for the Seattle offense.
Most of the stats are actually from 6 games because he did next to nothing this last week against Tampa. Because. That's very true. They just obliterated the interior of Seattle's offensive line, and it wasn't pretty.
That's very true.
And Tampa made it really hard on him. But those stats really have come from 6 games. And if you think about those numbers in 6 games, those are some tremendous numbers for such a short period of time.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy. Okay. Let's go to the other side. Defensive Rookie of the Year.
So this one, I mean, obviously there's 3 rookies that play considerable snaps. Bryant and Boye Mafe, we've already mentioned a little bit here. But it's got to be Tariq Woolen. I mean, he's the starter. He plays more snaps than the other 2. I think more snaps than the other 2 combined. And he's doing it at a Pro Bowl level as a rookie.
Yeah. I mean, yes, absolutely.
The other 2 kids have been good too. I don't take anything away from how well, Bryant has played. He struggled a little bit the first couple of weeks, but then, found his legs and has been great since then. And Mafe, since, having his role increased after like 3 weeks, has done good things whenever he's on the field. So,
and mostly he's been defending the run really well. In fact, his grade for defending the run is much better than his pass rushing grade, which they really haven't turned him loose yet. So we'll see how that progresses. But yeah, Tariq Woolen, obviously, with the 5 interceptions, the 10 pass breakups, the quarterback rating when thrown against, and basically he's kind of shutting down one side of the field on most games. And he's just a great player, fun to watch. It's the obvious choice. I mean, it's nothing, like you said, not taking away from Boye Mafe, Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant's had some great plays, but he hasn't been as consistent as Tariq Woolen. And that's definitely the difference here, obviously. Okay, now we're getting into the meat and potatoes of this thing. Best player on offense, Keith.
This one was hard for me because you look at some of the stuff that, Lockett and Metcalf have done, and obviously, Geno, but we said we weren't going to consider him for this one. And then, both the rookie tackles could be included in this. Ultimately, I came back to Ken Walker for this one because his ability to just grind out those yards. He's leading the NFL in fourth quarter rushing yards and fourth quarter rushing yards per attempt. And that's, the first one leading the league in fourth quarter rushing yards. Remember, he didn't play in 3 games at the start of the year because it was, Penny's job. And so, yeah, he's been good, and he's been good when it counts the most. And that's at the end of games when you've got the lead.
Yeah, crazy. So I disregarded the rule, the unsaid rule, the said rule or whatever, and I went with Geno Smith in this category. And the reason that I did is because he's earned it. He is, when you look at he's just the best player on the field some of those games, most of those games. DK Metcalf, I think, is my second best. Ken Walker's third. Tyler Lockett's right there, obviously. Tyler Lockett does more with less, really. DK Metcalf has 77 targets. Tyler Lockett is 67 targets, but out of those, Lockett has 54 receptions. DK Metcalf has 48. Tyler Lockett has more yards and more touchdowns. But Geno Smith is the head of the snake here. 17 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 72.8% completion percentage. He's also carries the ball really well. 45 carries so far, 218 yards, and a touchdown. 2,474 yards total. If you extrapolate those totals for the rest of the season, he's over 4,000 yards passing and about 25 touchdowns and so forth. So it'll be fun to watch him the rest of the year. But so far, he's my best player on offense.
Yeah, and he is the obvious choice. Except for that, we said that we could only choose Geno for two categories.
Right, and I held true to that.
Okay.
In the end.
All right. So let's move over to the defense. And the defensive player, this one, like, I went back and forth between Nuasu and Tariq Woolen.
Mm-hmm.
And those 2 guys have been the 2 standouts. And it doesn't to say that other guys haven't played well, but those 2 guys have been the standouts. They're the Pro Bowlers on defense. And You could also go with Jordan Brooks on that list too, who is already over 100 tackles on the year. He's going to destroy his own record if he stays healthy. But I ended up just saying, Tariq Woolen, because, the interceptions, his ability to turn teams over. He shut down, Sutton in the first game and really limited Hopkins in there. He's just been a difference maker in every game. He's been a guy that, the other opponent has a big weapon. Well, let's stick Woolen on him. And that automatically neutralizes the weapon. And that is such a great asset to have. And he's a rookie, but he's my defensive player.
Good choice. Solid choice, really. I mean, you've picked two rookies for best player on offense, best player on defense. Obviously, discounting the Geno Smith rule that you had, but the Shelby Harris could be a candidate in this category. 26 tackles, 2 sacks, 20 pressures. He's available every game. Does a great job in the middle. And then Jordan Brooks, I agree, he's on the list, but you take a closer look at his play and some of the advanced stats. While he's got the tackles, some of those missed tackles, being out of position and so forth, tell a larger tale there. I don't think he's having quite the season that he should be having, I think. And then Uchenna Nwasu, to me, is the winner in this category for the same reasons you kind of talked about with Tariq Woolen, being a guy that makes a difference every game. 33 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, 7 sacks, 35 pressures. Here's a guy that makes his presence known. Other teams need to scheme him. He still gets through. He makes a difference on third downs. And I think that he's really close to MVP level on this team.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, those two guys are the two people I considered. You mentioned Shelby Harris. He is kind of the forgotten man on the defense. He actually has been extremely good, and he did miss one game, and it was clearly obvious when he was gone. And the defensive line looked terrible that game. So
True.
I mean, he's a guy that is playing really good football, and the defense would not be as good without him. But I still think that Woolen and Nwasu make a bigger impact.
Agreed.
So that's why I really thought that it was a 2-person choice, and I ended up going with Tariq.
Most Valuable Player Award for the first 10 games of the 2022 season, Keith.
There is one potential answer.
I disagree.
Really?
I think that there's 2 potential answers.
I think there's one potential answer. And it's Russell Wilson.
Currently we hold Denver's 7th overall pick in the
no, obviously it's not. But yeah, because without that trade, we don't have Boye Mafe, we don't have Charles Cross. We probably reach for an offensive tackle instead of waiting and getting Abe Lucas. Like, the draft just does not fall to Seattle in the way that it did, where they got essentially six starters out of the draft. That doesn't happen without the Russell Wilson trade. And as good as Geno's been, you replace those 2 rookie tackles with a couple of, journeyman vets that get beat on the regular. I'm sorry, Geno doesn't look as good. And, Ken Walker doesn't look as good and all of that. So I said it jokingly, we could go with Russell Wilson, but honestly, there's a case to be made there. I said Geno Smith is the MVP. And how could you not? I mean, the guy is top 5 quarterback in the league, which nobody saw coming. I don't think Pete Carroll in his wildest dreams thought Geno was going to perform at this high of a level consistently, game in and game out. Has he been perfect? No, but no quarterback has been. But he's outperformed not just expectations. He's outperformed other quarterbacks.
He's literally changed our philosophy as a team building structure
Yeah.
into the future.
He's no
Like,
longer
we're
just a placeholder waiting for
Yeah,
next year's
right.
rookie. He's
right.
the guy going forward after this season.
Yeah, he is. Most valuable player award. I went with Uchenna Nwasu.
Interesting.
And I didn't do it because I wanted to limit Geno Smith's mentions on this show. I went with it because I honestly believe Uchenna Nwasu's in equal footing in this category. I kind of knew you'd be leaning Geno Smith on this. And for obvious reasons. Geno's probably the more important player to the team in this category, and therefore gets weighted on this list for sure. But this defense would not be anywhere close to having the turnaround that it had if Uchenna Nwasu isn't on the field and isn't making plays for the Seahawks. And without that turnaround, this team wouldn't be winning games, because even if we had a pretty decent offense with the defense the way it was the first 3 weeks coming out, there's no way that we'd be winning games at all. And Uchenna Nwasu has been the best player on the defense, other than Tariq Woolen, driving that change, and he's my MVP.
No, I respect that. For me, it was the guy who touches the ball on every offensive play has the ability to make a bigger impact. And so, and I think part of it is also just how much Geno has exceeded what anyone thought of him.
Agreed.
And so that part,
and the reason that I went with Uchenna Nwasu is because he just kept coming up in my own head when I was making this list. It was like and his stats came up, and his he was best off-season acquisition. He was defense, best player on defense. He was this and that, and it was like I couldn't stop talking about him. And so when you have a player like that's got that much of an impression, that's who I went with.
Yeah, makes sense.
Fun list. Is there anything we left out?
No
negatives. I mean, we left the negatives out, basically.
Best assistant coach.
Wow.
Who do you think?
Well, I think that you'd have to go with Shane Waldron. Sean Desai's on there, Carl Scott. You could go with the quarterbacks coach, Canales, on the offensive side as well. You could go with the offensive line coach, Andy Dickerson. Those are all great coaches. They're going to get future opportunities, I think. That's how good they are. But nobody really thought that the Seattle's offense was going to be able to play ball this year in any way, shape, or form. Last year was kind of a unknown. It was kind of messy. And Russell Wilson, quite frankly, had a part in that. And when Russell's separated from the offense, Shane Waldron really takes ownership, gives it to Geno. Geno operates the system the way it's designed, and it makes Shane Waldron that much more important to this offense and the success of the overall team. I think it's Shane Waldron.
Yeah. Shane Waldron definitely, in my mind, gets it. On the defensive side, I mean, the job they've done in figuring out how to take this defense that was terrible and make a couple of schematic tweaks and turn it into something that's been absolutely great since then. Like that's what good coordinators do. I would have liked to see them do it earlier. Like, and
we're talking about Sean Desai and Carl Scott there. And you take a look at their integration of not only Kobe Bryant, but Tariq Woolen into this situation, give him the skills and the teaching on a weekly basis, bringing in a guy like Richard Sherman to give him some advice and hands-on. It's a great job. And you mentioned the turnaround. It's like, I was just so disappointed in the first 3 weeks. I was thinking, new coaching staff, these guys are really smart, and emphasis on smart. I mean, these guys literally are just smart, and they couldn't figure it out. And I was like, what is going on here? Doesn't make any sense. On paper, we've got the skill sets to be able to have a decent defense, and it's not happening. What's going on? So I'm glad they did figure it out. And I think that the addition of Bruce Irvin is kind of understated in that as well. And they just had a chance to integrate those rookies and play together. Also, Mike Jackson, you can't discount that either. That choice to put him in there and allow him to develop too, and just having the patience to kind of see this thing through and not. I know they kind of went back to kind of a hybrid 4-3 thing and so forth, but nonetheless, they're kind of sticking with this thing, and hopefully it pays dividends in not only this year, but year 2, year 3 of this scheme.
Yeah. I mean, it goes to show you that sometimes the general manager and the defensive coaches aren't on the same page as far as the archetype that they're looking for. And John Snyder kept bringing in Shelby Harris and Quentin Jefferson types because that's what the team needed using in the old system, and it didn't work with the new one. So they adjusted the new system and made it work with the guys that they had. So that works. One last question for you. If the Seahawks make the playoffs, does John Snyder win Executive of the Year?
I think he should definitely be in the top 2 or 3. There's no question. I mean, you take a look at the Philadelphia Eagles. They've done a tremendous job, but they've also had high draft picks. They've also got another high draft pick next year as well that they acquired to kind of keep this thing going. So that's definitely consideration for me. But has anybody done a better job this year, this offseason, than John Schneider, starting with the Russell Wilson trade, and now in retrospect, reviewing that trade, turns out it was a home run. The NFL draft was a home run, acquiring Uchenna Nwasu for really an inexpensive contract was a great move. And then you take a look at the way that the rookies have played. It's just a stellar draft class with a couple players that haven't yet
starters,
even had an opportunity yet. So
yeah, like Derek Young has been playing special teams. So he's on the roster and having a chance. At some point, he's going to get a chance on the offense because
he's been out there. He just hasn't had any opportunities.
We go back to the preseason and he dropped a bunch of balls, which was why he, didn't make the roster out of camp, but he got open. He showed up on tape and looked pretty good until the ball got to him.
And the kid from Ohio State, the pass rusher, Tyreek Smith, who's been on injury reserve since the first week of camp, he's got an opportunity as well next year. And then you take a look at the locked and loaded draft that we have. We've got Denver's first round pick, Denver's second round pick, adding to our own first and second, plus a third. I think there's 2 fourths as well. This team is ready to go again in the offseason. So whatever we do, wherever we can get with this current roster, as far as we can go, and then have this next draft plus $56 million in free agency. Now that's going to come down a little bit, but we can kind of manipulate that. We've talked about that before. This team is as ready as any team in the NFL right now to take another leap after this season.
Yep. I honestly would agree. And I mean, they've got to do it, right? They're poised to do it, but they've got to do it. Cincinnati last year was a Super Bowl team with a ton of cap space and draft capital in front of them. And they should have taken this major step forward this year, but they didn't do it. They picked wrong as far as what guys to spend money on in the offensive line. They didn't draft as well, and they're not improved, and they should have been much improved. So
it's not easy. I mean, having your first 6 picks in the draft hit, like every one of them, is crazy. And to be able to do that 2 years in a row, it's highly unlikely. Now, can we hope for 3 out of the first 4 picks? Those are high picks. I'm hoping that we can have some impact, but you know what? Our roster is pretty good, pretty sound right now. And with a few re-signings and so forth, we may not have opportunities for rookies to come in right away and play like we did this year. So it'll be interesting how they kind of balance that all out.
depends on the position, because there are places where rookies could come in and compete and
I agree.
start right away next year.
I agree. I think we need to be taking a look at the interior offensive line. I think that we need to be taking a look at the interior of the defensive line and linebacker. I mean, investing in the trenches while we have high draft picks is, I think, really important.
That third wide receiver spot.
Yeah, those skill spots too. But
safety.
Yeah.
I keep going.
Yeah. No, you're right. And a quarterback to develop, and on and on. I mean, there's really opportunities here. We don't know if Penny's coming back. We could probably use a nice second option at running back. I don't know that DJ Dallas or Travis Homer are the answer there. It'd be nice to have a really nice 1-2 punch. So we'll see where we're at in the offseason with Penny, but get good roster. I mean, really every team has 3 or 4 spots that they could immediately upgrade. The question is, how does Seattle do it? Where do they spend their money in free agency? What do they prioritize? And then how do they attack the draft? I mean, talk about fun. Yeah. It doesn't get any funner than that for you and I in the off season.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be fun. This is going to be a fun off season. It's been a fun season, especially since we didn't expect it to be a fun season. We expected this season to be long and kind of painful, but it's been fun. So let's keep it up.
Yeah.
More of the same, right. Seahawks.
All right. Next show, we're going to take a look at the down list, which, it'll end up being positive because that's who we are. We'll kind of turn this thing around. We'll say, what can we do to improve? What players need to step up the rest of the way? We've got 7 games to go. 5 of those 7 are at home. We've got an opportunity to get into the playoffs, but can we do anything once we get there? We'll find out. All right, let's get out of here. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NWCHawk. And you can find the show at Hawks Playbook on Twitter. Find us on your favorite podcast platforms and YouTube. Hit that subscribe button and share it. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWCHawk. Keith is at Myers NFL. And the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.